Yo, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the Monday Overreaction Show, otherwise known as the Overreaction Monday Show. I swear to God, I'm never going to get that right. Like, comment, subscribe to the page. It's only 2 words. You'd think I could remember the order they go in. I'm Jeff. He's on War. Jump into the Specs chat. Chat away. Send us your super chats. We're going to have a very free-flowing show today. We'll probably touch on a million different topics over the course of the next hour or so. But we lead off Texas basketball. They made the tournament. And in the end, other than maybe a couple of teams stealing bids, it feels like they got in. Everybody's focused on North Carolina and as the team that got in that everybody has question marks about. In the end, onward, Texas gets in. It's a play-in game. They've got work to do before they get to say they're in the NCAA tournament proper. Rodney Terry lives to fight another day. And, you know, as the biggest topic on the 40 acres right now is what will happen to Rodney Terry. And I think there's a big old TBA next to his name because while I think he's got 1 foot out the door, one good week, one good next 3 games, and Rodney Terry will still be the basketball coach at Texas. I'm convinced of that.
I 100% agree with you, Catch. I mean, because, and you're right, it is all it takes is a week. Like he literally, when you talk about you kind of control your own fate, you control your own destiny. To say that, hey, okay, I only need 1 good week with one of the best basketball players in the country. Like, now, if they can remember to get that guy the ball sometimes, Catch, I think it's, who knows? Like, there's sometimes that I think we know he's the best guy in the country, and I don't know if everybody else on the team realizes or the coaches realize that we might want to get him the ball a little more often. Like, we might want to do or die on him. But at the end of the day, Catch, if you're Chris Del Conte, and you've got a billion things that you have to raise money for. I mean, you're talking NILs. You're talking about the new bubble. Like, we can go down the list of all the things that Chris Del Conte has to raise money for. I just think the last thing he really, really wants to do is say, all right, let me go and fire this guy, pay out these millions. Let me go hire a new person and then get these millions. Like, I know it's Texas, but man, I just would rather devote my energy and stuff to another thing. Now, is he probably ready to pull the trigger? Sure, right? Is it? And listen, we know, Catch, that at the end of the day, we've seen it happen. We see if Del Conte's got his mind made up, we saw what happened with Pierce. It's just a matter of time. We saw what happened with Tom Herman. Tom Herman blew out Colorado in the Alamo Bowl, and he got fired like a week later. So if his mind is made up, what happens may or may not matter when it's all said and done. And maybe Rodney Terry's just dangling the win, and there's nothing to be said for it. But I do think that if Del Conte just could say, man, if I could have one less thing to worry about, yeah, I wouldn't mind if Rodney Terry got on the heater this week and he got to the Sweet 16. And I can just remove that from my plate and my agenda.
The thing is, Texas doesn't have enough basketball history success to ignore a Sweet 16. It's a big step. But, people called me out on War when earlier this year, a couple of weeks ago, it was like a month and a half ago, maybe, I had the audacity. This was when Texas was on a real heater. They'd won like 3 out of 4. They had a couple of big ranked wins on the back-to-back. They'd gone at LSU and beat them by like 100. And I was like, look, I think Texas, it might be more difficult for Texas to get into the tournament than it would be for them to win a couple of games and make the Sweet 16 because they've got the guard play. They do have the guard play to win in the tournament. They've got a guy in Trey Johnson that can drop 30 on any given night. Now, he doesn't do it every night, but that's in his bag. And, Tremont Mark can get hot. Like, they've got guys. Kendall Weaver is back. Like, they having Weaver back, along with if Trey Johnson and Mark are firing, like that's a team that can win some games. We saw it this weekend. They beat Vanderbilt. They beat Texas A&M. That would be enough to get you to the Sweet 16 if you weren't playing a play-in game. Winning 3 in a row, I don't know that this team has it in them, but I think you're right that Chris Del Conte doesn't want to have a basketball problem, but he does have one. Very quickly, the Texas fan base has become pretty disenfranchised under Rodney Terry. They don't like the product. They don't think it's good enough. It's really not. But it's not terrible. It hits making the tournament 2 years in a row. That hits a minimum level of success, but he's not an elite team builder at this level. They've got 0 commitments in recruiting going into the next year, which means when this team gets completely destroyed, they're all going to have to do it in the portal. There's no Trey Johnson sitting in the cupboard just waiting to hit the floor next year.
Yeah.
I think he realizes people are checking out. They don't want to go to the Moody Center to watch this basketball team, and that's not what they had under Chris Beard. I mean, we don't need to relitigate why he's not at Texas anymore, but there was a genuine excitement that doesn't exist, and that was less than 26, 27 months ago. They want to be able to get that back. And I think the question for me is, does he really know who he's going to get? Does he have Schlossnagle of college basketball on a hook just waiting to be reeled in? Or is there still some uncertainty about what exactly the move would be? I think maybe that, coupled with Terry still has a fighting chance, makes this a TBA situation. Penny for Chris Del Conte's true thoughts, though. I would love to know what he's telling a Board of Regent member. I would love to know what a conversation with Kevin Eltife sounds like right now on the basketball front, because there's a lot of money involved. That part is real. And it's not like Texas athletics is swimming in such a surplus that adding $20 million to what they're currently doing, like that would sting, Anwar. It's not like he's throwing around money and just having a good old time with it. He is Floyd Mayweather Jr. at the casino. He is not with Texas surplus right now.
Can I just ask the question, though, Catch, that I get what the stated goal is, right? And just because you haven't achieved it doesn't mean you shouldn't strive for it. So I do understand that I may be giving the answer to the question as I ask it. But at the end of the day, what is Texas men's basketball really? Outside of Chris Beard, when I got here, all I heard was, Rick Barnes can't get out of the first weekend, right? I mean, and you have to go way back into the archives as to find out when Texas really had made a run, right? You got to go back years to when we're talking about Texas being like in the semifinals, right? That's we're talking about 2000s, right? The early 2000s. And since then, outside of that Chris Beard, which I don't know how you recreate what Chris Beard did, like the Chris Beard hire was honestly the perfect hire at the time. Again, forget what happened that led to him not being here, right? I'm just talking about the basketball situation. Guy who was a part of a Longhorn. He was at Texas Tech. You're able to get him. He's got the excitement. He's able to win. He's recruiting at a high level. Those things are hard to duplicate. Like it just is. And so I guess what I'm saying is, while I hear the oh man, this thing sucks, does it suck enough to drop $20 million to get a new coach? Like, is the level of, because what I don't know, Catch, and this is what the question is. This is a sincere question. Are we at a mob mentality at this point or do people really, really, really genuinely care about the Texas men's basketball team? Or is it just a pile-on? And it's kind of like that thing on Orange Blood sketch. Let's say you write an article and you have an error in the article and one person points it out, then the next thing you know, the next 10 posts are the same people pointing out that one error. And it's like, okay, listen, there's 3,000 words here. Is that what you guys are really focused on? Or are you focused more now, instead of the article, on the pylon that comes and exists for pointing out the error? That's where I'm really at with it. Do people really, really care? Or is it just a talking point?
Anwar, I think you're asking the right question. So I think it's if nothing else, it is a question that needs to be asked. It needs to be discussed. And if we come out of the other side and the answer is change, then that's okay, right? I think you and I, if that's the answer, then that's the answer. What I would say is I have made this point on Orange Bloods a lot. Let's forget about ambition for a second, because I think that is a big piece of this conversation. But we do need to have like a realistic talk about what Texas's level of expectations should be for basketball based on who they actually are, okay? Mm-hmm. And who they actually are is a basketball program that, outside of a run from about 2002-03 through about 08, where Rick Barnes had himself a run. There's a Final Four. There's a couple of Elite Eights in there. Like, they were really good. And I think there is a part of the fan base that feels like that was proof that that's who they can be, even if that's not who they've been for half a generation. Okay, so, but outside of that little bitty window, I mean, this is a program that's been to only, you can count them on one hand, the number of Sweet 16s that Texas has been in the history of the program outside of that little stretch, right? In my lifetime, we're talking about, they did it in 89-90 with Penders. They did it in 97 with Reggie Freeman and that group, where Coppin State beats the 15s or the 2 seed as the 15. And then Texas, as an 11, beat the 7, but got matched up with a 15. They snuck into a Sweet 16. It counts. You got a couple of years ago that made it to the Elite Eight, but like, these are not growing on trees. So this idea that Texas fans, there's like this notion that they're better than they are, and they're not. And look, to be fair, this is a really hard sport. Kentucky has been to one Final Four in like the last 10 years. Mm-hmm. Kentucky.
Yeah.
Kansas has only been to the Sweet 16 once in the last 6 years. Now, look, they won a national championship, but Kansas is looking around right now at who they are as a basketball program, and they're like, more Sweet 16s. Why are we not doing Sweet 16 every single year? It's a tough sport to crack. And Kentucky and Kansas don't do it every year anymore. They don't. And Kansas isn't expected to do it this year. And who knows with Kentucky? Maybe they got a Sweet 16 in them, but maybe not. So I think there's a clarity that Texas fans need to have. Now, this needs to be said, and this is what I think ultimately rules the day. They know deep. So the moment Texas started winning the Directors Cup, I think there's some vanity in that for Chris Beard that's unavoidable.
Del Conte.
Excuse me, Chris Del Conte. Sorry. Mm-hmm. I think there's vanity there that's the new standard. If you are in a sport and you aren't kicking in on the Directors Cup, then that means you're not nationally elite. How many get out of jail cards do you get? Now, look, in the Directors Cup deal, like, they'll get some points for making the tournament. That helps, right? That helps in terms of minimum level of success. I just think there's a feeling, though, amongst the fan base that Rodney Terry's the worst head coach on campus by like 100 miles. Mm-hmm. Every other coach in every other sport is really, and this is the thing that kills Terry. That they've got like Mike White in softball. They go get that guy from Oregon, guarantee on the box. Guess what? Guarantee on the box. Same thing with Schlossnagel. You hire an elite guy, what happens? They've won 17 in a row. They are going to be in a top 10 matchup. Yeah. This upcoming, they will have the eyes of college baseball will be on the baseball program because they're going to be hosting the number one team in the country. And it is not like number one's coming to town. This is a big deal. And that's what happens when you go get quality. There's a sense that if you get the head coaches together at Texas, all of them in all sports, that Rodney Terry on Thanksgiving sits at the kids' table. And you know what? He does.
He does. If you're talking flow in track and field, if we're talking what the swim coach does, if you're talking about Mike White
volleyball program,
you're talking about Mike White replaces Connie Clark, like to your point, like at that, and now even now Sark could walk in there. He's like, oh, I don't have to sit over there anymore. I'll sit with these guys
because he built his program, and now he's had them do something in the last 2 years that no other program in college football has done. Back-to-back semifinalists. I mean, he still has to win the big one, but even Sark gets to sit at the adult table now. Yes. And that did not exist. 2 years ago, we weren't saying that, but you know what? Now we say it. They wanted to give Rodney Terry a chance. I think, look, it's the Jeremy Foley quote.
Yeah.
It is the Jeremy Foley quote. And I guess that's about like as simple as I can make it. If it's something that has to be done, what is it?
Inevitably.
Yes.
Anything that has to be done inevitably should be done immediately.
And I think if that's the vibe and they've got the money and the want to do it, I get it. I do, because that Jeremy Foley quote is one of the most sage pieces of advice that's so simple. It never fails to be true. I've never heard that fail yet. And so every time
I can apply that in all my relationships.
No, hey man,
true.
It cuts to the bone. It's so true. And I'll be honest on Laura, like I don't always remember the quote exactly right, but I remember the quote. And I cannot tell you how many times in my life in the last 11 years where I'll be involved in any number of things. And I'll be like, well, you know what the old Florida AD would say? And like, it always is true.
It is. Whatever you're going to do inevitably should be done immediately. In other words, that's what Jerry Foley would say. And it's like, when it came to hiring coaches, and more importantly, firing coaches, he's like, if I'm thinking that I'm going to do it, I need to go ahead and do it. Like, I don't need to pussyfoot around. I don't need to wait around. And at the end of the day, if you're Chris O'Connell, and at the end of the day, you're telling yourself, all right, I just think I'm probably going to go ahead and do this. I mean, no, because you know what's unfortunate, I think, for Rodney Terry is that the SEC was basically kind of like the I-9 of the NCAA tournament. Everybody got a trophy. Everybody 14 teams get in. And I know we're talking about playing stuff, but 14 teams, like that's literally I-9 kind of stuff. Like 13 at-large bids. Like, what are we talking about? So if you're Rodney, you can't even hang your hat on that because you're like, hey, look, it's like, look at my trophy. And it's like, everybody got one. You're not the special one. Like this is the I-9 of NCAA this year. And so that I think he's got to win, but I don't know. The thing is, and I go back to that where I started with, Catch, just covering Del Conte for all these years. He stays tight. He stays close to the vest when it comes to these things. Like there'll be warning signs, there'll be indicators. Like is he celebrating with the team? Is he putting them in the newsletter?
That's a
All
great
those.
point.
You'll know, but he'll ride it out, and then the next thing you know, it's boom boom, it's done, and it's fast too. Tom Herman was fired in the morning, catch, and then the next thing you know, by the evening time, we were holding a press conference in order to introduce the new coach. Pierce Sloss, it was like boom boom, like this man, he works behind the scenes, and he makes sure. The one thing I say about him, catch. When he's about to hire somebody, it's about as quiet as a church mouse. You don't hear it.
And the Terry situation is the only one so far that does it. At no point in the hiring process did it mimic what he typically does. Like, I actually I don't want to. I think everybody knows. I've probably been Chris Del Conte's roughest critic around the 40 acres. And I say that acknowledging, like, in general, I give the guy an A for his overall work as an athletic director. But, like, I've nitpicked Del. I will never, ever, 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 ever give him a free pass on the Eyes of Texas situation. Like, that was such a walking, talking disaster of a failure. But, like, we moved on. But as a fundraiser, he kills it. I think as a guy that cares about being engaged with the fan base, I think he kills it. I think as a guy who hires coaches and elevates his programs when they're struggling, I think he's been phenomenal. Like, but occasionally I will poke him with the stick and say, you don't get free passes on everything just because. I never do that with anybody. But I actually give him one. I think he played that wrong, and I think he played it wrong from the very beginning. Because I think at the moment Rodney Terry takes over and you say, what are we looking for in a new coach? Someone with an extensive track record of major college success as a head coach is a prerequisite that we will never shy away from. And he can point to every hire that he's made in every sport and go, well, okay, fair enough. That's what he likes. And can't blame him for that. And if you establish the criteria early on, then everybody just knows Rodney Terry ain't it. No offense to Rodney Terry. And I think even as the season goes along, at least you've established that. They went into that. But I get it. I don't. He got pressured, public pressured, whatever, and they went to the Elite Eight, and it couldn't be ignored. If they cut the strings after 2 years and make a big hire and correct what needs to maybe be corrected, I'm one to give him a complete free pass on what happened because of all of the other examples that honestly show how good he is at hiring coaches. I'm fascinated to know what a football coaching hire search would have looked like in a non-pandemic year when a lot of guys I think you and I know he might have been interested in just had some kind of wonky things going on. I wonder what that would have looked like. I don't know that they would end up looking better than they do. Like in the end, it was very serendipitous that it kind of went the way that it went. But, I am at a point where I trust Chris Del Conte on these. He's earned it. And I don't think he'll pussyfoot around. So far, he has not been a let's kick the can down the road kind of a guy. And I think the one thing, if you think back, let's go back to the end of Shaka. Shaka really did get another year in part because of the presence of Greg Brown in recruiting. There was this thought of like, can't lose Greg Brown. There was this thought of like, we can't pass up the opportunity to see that guy play basketball for 12 months, less than 12 months. And in the end, that was such a disaster of a mentality. Yeah. That actually was if there was a what needs to be done inevitably needs to be done immediately, that was probably it. We were doing this thing where it was like, hey man, Shaka's got a recruit coming in next year. And if Trey Johnson were committed right now, and you could tell yourself, hey man, next year you're building around maybe a top 3 NBA draft pick, the best freshman scorer in the country. You could probably, I can hear it in my ears now what that sounds like. We did it just a couple of years ago, but it doesn't. They have nobody. This roster, and it's why they really, the portal opens up in college basketball like this week. They need to, whatever they're going to do, what they can't afford is to make a coaching change so far after the portal that a lot of the portal business is done. It's what makes hiring an NBA coach, I think, really hard. It sounds good, I think, from a financial perspective. There's some sticker value there where you're like, hey, man, that looks good on paper. But if you want to go hire Quinn Snyder, like that guy might not be available until June or May, probably May. That's waiting too. You're essentially punting the entire season. So I think you almost have to hire a college guy unless it's a guy with NBA experience that can just flat out be available now. And most of these guys that we're talking about with Quinn Snyder, these guys they're on teams that are probably going to be in the postseason. And those dudes are not going to leave an NBA. I don't care. They're not leaving. Quinn Snyder's not leaving the Hawks in one of his best coaching jobs in his career with all of the issues. So, like, I don't know. But you got to, whatever happens, Del Conte's got to do it really quickly.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's funny, as you took me down a trip down memory lane, Chris Del Conte did the thing that he typically doesn't do, is that he got caught up in emotions when it came to Rodney. He got caught up in emotions, right? The Chris Beard thing happened. That was like wild, right? And now all of a sudden Texas is getting bad publicity. You know how Chris Del Conte doesn't like that kind of publicity, right? He doesn't like those things, right? And so I think he got caught up in emotions. And Texas gets to the Elite Eight, right? He's facing it. I will say what you probably can't say. Okay? But I can say it. I can say it. Chris Del Conte can't fire. It doesn't feel like he can fire a brother that made it to the Elite Eight. Like that, just from a PR perspective, makes it look like, what? Wait, this black guy got this team to the Elite Eight and then you fired him? Like, that's a hell of a world to deal with, right? At that point, he's almost, I can, that's why I say I can say it, you can't.
But can I say something you can't say?
What's that?
Man, in 2025, ain't nobody caring about that anymore.
Not anymore, but I'm talking about what happened back then.
It was 2 years ago. And what I would say is that the mentality, would there have been a 24-hour window of blowback? Yes. Is First Take talking about this? Hell no. Texas basketball's not big enough that if something happens to Rodney Terry, they're putting that in the B block on First Take. Like, I just think where Texas, where they made their mistake was thinking that everybody cares about them so much that it would be a thing that would last more than one day. Man, the media cycle couldn't stay focused on Baylor for more than 24 hours at a time. Like, really terrible things. If it doesn't involve LeBron James, if it doesn't involve Aaron Rodgers, if it's not the Dallas Cowboys, they're not paying attention to it. They don't care. So at worst, 2 years ago when this decision was being made, there'd have been a 24-hour news cycle where there'd have been some columns. Somebody maybe on Around the Horn and their final comment would have been like, they're being mean to Rodney Terry. that would have been over by Tuesday.
Yes, but Chris doesn't like the negativity. He can't stand it. He wants to be not liked. He wants to be the popular guy. He wants to be the life of the party. Like, and that's why I'm not disagreeing with you.
But you think he knows now the climate, like a lot of stuff, real world things have happened. DEI programs do not exist. I think they now operate in the world where they're like, we don't have to be overly sensitive to these racial issues because nobody else is overly sensitive to them in 2025 right now. And,
and the irony is, Catch, when you talked about recruiting, you know what the irony was? Texas had A.J. Johnson and Ron Holland committed, 2 5-stars. Rodney Tide, he gets hired, and both of those guys decommit. And it was almost like instantaneously where you thought like, oh, well, he's going to be able to hold on to these guys, and everything goes. And it was almost like they stayed committed so Rodney Terry could get the job because they liked him and they thought they were doing him a solid. And then after he got the job, they're like, all right, man, we out. We're not coming here. And we're not playing.
That's exactly what happened.
we're not playing for you. We're not just not what we're going to do.
Well, and I think that's the problem that Rodney has, even in recruiting, like in general. I think people like him enough that to say out loud, I really like him. But that's not the same thing as, like, I think people like Rodney Terry more than they like Chris Beard. That doesn't mean I think guys are more prone to want to sign up and play for Chris Beard than they are Rodney Terry. And like that has been proven time and time again. It ain't show friends, it's show business. And these guys are making basketball decisions. And I think the problem that Rodney Terry has is that, now the recruiting is so dead. They've got nobody signed or committed. They went over on all of the best kids in the state of Texas. And it was at that moment in the Tom Herman era when the whole if they hadn't fired Herman that year, we all knew that recruiting was going to be in the dumpster that next cycle, that he would have just been on the bubble. He would have just been, everybody would have been talking about his job security, whether or not he lost his job or not. It would be the story that becomes a climate that really becomes difficult to recruit in once you've lost your mojo. And so well, the one thing Rodney Terry can't say when they get together to discuss the job after the season is over is like, what's your plan for next year? Oh, boss, we got it all hooked up in recruiting. Well, no, you don't. You actually don't. So what's the plan? And I think that lack of a plan even makes it easier. So I think it's done. Barring they win 3 straight games, which they're capable of, but I would put it at a 10% chance that they could pull off 3 consecutive wins against 3 teams that are all about as good as they are at worst. They're playing on 11. They're playing Xavier. Xavier's a 2-point favorite in that game. If they make that, then they've got to go beat Illinois. Illinois will be a favorite. If they do that, they probably have to play Kentucky, a team they've already beaten, but a team they beat at home and a team that ultimately would be a favorite. So they will need to be a true underdog story this weekend. It's not impossible. It's really unlikely. And I think barring something really unlikely, I think 10% is really unlikely. So barring something really unlikely, this is it. I just want to say, Anwar, the other elephant in the room, man, once you get to the point where your fans are rooting against the team to win because they want change.
Yeah.
Dude, that's happening. And I know it's not widespread, and I don't think it's among the mainstream. I think the mainstream 45-year-old woman who's a Longhorn fan or 45-year-old guy who's maybe not on social media, not on Orange Blood, certainly. I think that guy can just turn the games on and enjoy them. But your hardcores, are rooting against the team. It's happening. We've seen it. It's like, man, there was already a thread on the board of, and Kirk Bowles was tweeting about this yesterday. Don't make the NCAA tournament. Turn down the NIT. Like they were ready to move on, and they were ready to like this. There were a segment that was like, we want out of this bad marriage. The last thing we want to do is at the last moment go, let's go to counseling and see if we can make it work. And and
by the way, you can't do it just because your spouse had a good week. Because you have to look at the totality of the marriage.
No,
you can't be like, you know what? It's been a pretty good week. I'm just going to ignore the last 4 years. What a week it's been. I'm not going to file that paperwork. That's not.
And hey, God, don't let us have like good sex. Because then it's like, you know what we've been missing is like we need to go out of the country in July. Like suddenly you're not just like, let's go to counseling. You are motivated like one good weekend. And it's like, we should go to Spain, shouldn't we?
Yes. And guess what?
And then you end up breaking up on the trip in Spain. Worst vacation ever.
And guess what? Tom Herman, would use that analogy, thought, you know what? I had a good weekend. We went and beat Colorado. Beat the hell out of them. I think that's good enough. And you know what Chris said? Is like, no, because I have to look at where the program is at. And when I look at where the program is at, to your point, you said recruiting. Texas had, Milroe committed. He had decommitted. Ewers was committed. He had decommitted. The Brockermeyers were committed. They had decommitted, right? So you knew that they were losing everything. Like everything they could have had was out the door. Was it Milroe that was committed, or was it another quarterback? Am I getting it confused?
No, well, Milroe was committed, but then Yursich never called him, just ghosted him. And so Milroe bounced because he was like, the new guy clearly doesn't give a F about me. Yeah. And then they got Ewers, and then it was like, well, then Jalen Milroe really didn't matter. All that mattered was that Quinn committed. But once the only thing that mattered was Quinn committing, and then he decommitted, then it was, and like you said, maybe it's ironic because of the careers that have taken place since, but the Brockermeyers were thought to be the biggest legacy recruit probably in the history of Texas football. You're talking about a legit former All-American offensive lineman, longtime NFL player, has the number one player at his position as an offensive lineman in the country. It was Texas's version of having an opportunity to have Jake Matthews. A&M just kept having one Matthews after another showing up and being a really good NFL level player. And this was their opportunity on paper to have that. And that's not, once they lost the dream.
That was it. The Brockermeyers was it. From a recruiting perspective, that killed it. That was the nail in the coffin.
Well, and the other thing was the elephant in the room on the Brockermeyer thing is that the eyes of Texas situation really bothered them.
Yeah.
And in a really complex situation that nobody, look, it's been 5 years. I am not relitigating this. I do not want to get back into it. I'm just acknowledging like the complications and the layers in this that existed. You had an affluent former white alum who was really upset at that moment about the school song being, were they going to lose it? Like what was happening? Like it really felt like some identity was under siege. And I think there was a lot of people that when that happened, the Brockermeyer family felt like a lot of affluent white Texas alums who were like, whoa, this is not happening. This is not happening. And that it was happening until it wasn't, until they nipped it in the bud and some dudes got fired and like they got rid of what they thought the problems were. And to be fair, I guess that situation did quiet down and resolve itself. But like that was just really complicated because it didn't feel so much like the Brockermeyers didn't pick Texas. because of football reasons.
Mm-hmm.
It felt like a lot of what was happening with Quinn and the Brockermeyers was there's just ick on the program right now. We don't want to, all things being considered. And I've been telling various people this same thing about various things for the last week. I got a friend of Heather and I, this woman, she's a very good looking woman, and she's just constantly associating herself with bad options. And I'm like, you have good options. Stop taking the bad options. You have good options. And if you were the Brockermeyers at the time, you were like, wait a minute. Nick Saban wants us.
Yeah.
And you know what's not happening at Alabama? All of this Mickey Mouse drama. And so it was just complicated. And I think, the thing you'd say about Rodney Terry, and this is the part that sucks. The thing that you can't keep saying out loud is like, he's so likable. Nobody is really here for that. They're just not.
No.
Shaka was likable. He's still likable. I don't know that Chris Beard is likable, really. Like, all things being equal, I want to hang out with Chris Beard. Like, I just don't get the sense that is my view. But in a world where he's not an alleged abuser, I'd let him coach the hell out of my college basketball team. And I think that's the thing about Rodney Terry. The unfortunate truth is we would all invite Rodney Terry to the barbecue, to the cookout, and want to hang out with him. He's good people. So it sucks that, like, it even has to be this way. But look, it is the way.
To your point, but wait, kids. It also doesn't help, even though it's been established. It also doesn't help that the two guys that Texas has fired, but predating Rodney Terry, their teams are kind of badass. It doesn't, and you can look and see Rick Barnes' Tennessee team doing what they do. You can look and see Chris Beard's team doing what they do, and you almost like, damn.
I mean, Shaka was National Coach of the Year last year, and nobody wants Shaka back, but Shaka's at a more difficult job, having more success than the guy at Texas is having.
It doesn't help when you look at everybody else and you look at yourself. It doesn't. And we know that we know that Chris Del Conte is cognizant of these things. Like, he is very cognizant. I think the point that you brought up, it's kind of towards the start of the show, is probably the bigger thing, which is that Director's Cup.
Yep.
Oh, Chris Del Conte loves that.
Of course he does.
When he got a taste of that, and all of, like, I got more praise, more people like me. Wait, this means I did a great job? Yeah. And
that's his trophy.
That is
nobody's trophy but his.
And he needs that Director's Cup in that trophy case. Like, and at the end of the day, I think the point is, when you start looking at all the sports, all at UT, everybody's pretty much kicking ass. Like, John Bianco, it seems like once a week, tweets out something about some new feature, some new award, something that somebody in the program has done, swimming, whether it's the softball, someone said rowing, like, everybody.
Softball team, number 2 in the country in its first SEC series, right? Welcome to the big bad SEC. They go to number 3 Florida, and they take the first 2 games, and they go for the sweep tonight, and it's just kind of like that in every sport except
women's basketball. I mean, like, Vic Schaefer comes into the SEC, and I mean, sure, that South Carolina game happened in the conference championship, but he did have success during the regular season. Like, Vic Schaefer is he's a G at this point. If someone tries to steal Vic Schaefer from Texas, Chris is like, oh, no, you're not. Like, how much more do you want? How much more do you need? Like, everybody is kicking ass. And to your point, when it's about the men's basketball team, and maybe I have the answer, that I asked, earlier, like, do people really care? Maybe, but Chris Del Conte does care, and that means something to him. And I think at the end of the day, it probably the deed probably ends up getting done unless he goes on some miracle run. But the thing that you better remember is that they did go on a miracle run one time, and then what did you deal with over the last couple of years? Like, is that going to be enough? Probably not.
Anything else? Like, we got 15 minutes ish. Look, we're spring. It's crazy to me. Like, everybody else is doing spring football, and Texas hasn't started yet.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little weird because, like, I'm perusing Oregon sites or Georgia sites or Oklahoma sites, and I'm like, oh, they got football nuggets, and it's like, I'm kind of ready for some spring football to get here because I'm ready to have an Overreaction Monday show. By the way, brought to you by RogueShop.com. Use that promo code OrangeBloods. Texas is home for legal CBD, THC, and so much more. We love the guys at Rogue Shop. I may have partaken in the products all weekend long. Gummy. You know what? I definitely took a gummy last night on war because I hadn't slept well. And every once in a while, I'll just go, oh my God, what am I doing? I got like Rogue gummies. Yeah. I just need to sit them down by the damn bed so I remember. But the bottom line is sleeplessness, anxiety, pain, your pets. Like, there's a little bit of everything. You just go shopping, go window shopping, see all the cool. Some of it's funny. Some of the names are funny. Like, just make your day a little bit better. Go check out RogueShop.com. They do bring you the Overreaction Monday show here on Orange Bloods Live every single day or every single week.
Catch, one thing that was interesting, and I'll be honest with you, don't forgive me. I was at a wedding over the weekend, so I had some other stuff on Sunday, so I didn't get a chance to be on Orange Bloods as much over the weekend. I saw something about Dia Bell, and he was talking to On3. I don't know if Jason had an update on this or not, but basically Dia Bell said, and it wasn't a huge update, but it made me think about something. He said basically, like, he's locked in with the Longhorns, and the quote is, as of right now, I don't have any plans to visit anyone else beside the University of Texas. And I just thought to myself, when I saw it, I was like, damn, Sark, Sark locks up his quarterbacks, man. And the one thing I've noticed, Catch, when Sark locks up a quarterback, there is no looking back. I mean, when he locked up Arch, people thought, oh, he's going to continue to do other things. Arch wasn't about that life. Arch was like, I was Sark, I'm done. Right? That was it. Quinn Ewers comes in here, he's done. Trey Owens comes in, he's done. Right? I mean, you had KJ Lacey for the most part where he locked in, and people thought, oh, is he maybe going to go to Alabama, this and that. He was done. And I saw the Dia Bell, and I thought, wow, you get decommits from a lot of different positions. But I feel like when it comes to that quarterback position, it's like there's something, and there's something to be said for Sark, but when he gets his guys, Catch, I feel like it's a wrap. It's a wrap. I don't worry about, oh, is he this guy going to, it's almost this. I saw that. I don't know if Jason had it. If not, it's not the biggest thing in the world. But I did have that. One of my overreactions is from a quarterback recruiting perspective, man, he's pretty damn elite.
Yes, for the record, Mr. Sukumel was in Dallas at the event, the QT7 event in Dallas. Had an update on Dia Bell midday Saturday.
Perfect.
And pretty much same thing. He's only got one official visit lined up. Yeah. It's the only official visit that he's going to take. He's actually going to be back in Austin next weekend. Schools keep knocking on the door. And at this point, if he's not even taking cursory visits, then you're feeling really good about that. KJ Lacey, I think there was some thought, that's probably the best example of what you're talking about. Was that a year ago, it looked like Keelan Russell would have been a Longhorn. And the issue was, do they even want to go after Keelan Russell? Do they want to try to take two quarterbacks in the class? Are they taking the right guy? And they took KJ Lacey, and then ultimately KJ Lacey kind of locked it in, stopped pussyfooting around and playing just he was playing footsie with Auburn a little bit. It was like, no, man, I'm sticking with Texas. That's it. And then he never really wavered off of that. And Diabell hasn't done that. So I think it's really interesting. Like, they definitely, when they become boos, like Sark locks in. And as long as you're loyal to him, he's never once showed a taste to cheat on his girl. He just doesn't. Like, they didn't do it a year ago with Keelan Russell. And if there was ever a situation where it would have been justified, because Keelan Russell ends up being ranked as a top 5 to 10 player in the country, higher than KJ Lacey by a lot. I think Keelan Russell's a different level of prospect than KJ Lacey. And yet they could have justifiably said, this kid's from Duncanville. We want to recruit more kids. We think he's better. He wants to come to Texas. This other kid could peel off, and they never did that. And yeah, I expect Diabell to sign with Texas. Like, I have no reservations about that whatsoever. And someone asked me this week, like, following the reports that KJ Lacey is improving on campus, or is impressing. Did I say improving? He's impressing in early days. And so is Trey Owens. Like, Texas is going to have good quarterbacks. And it's one of the reasons why you hired Steve Sarkisian. And I don't think Diabell looks at KJ. What Diabell knows is that until Arch Manning is gone, all those backup dudes are the same. Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah. Trey Owens can be like, I've been here 3 years. This is my 3rd year. It's my turn. Are you better, dude, than KJ Lacey and or Diabell? If you are, cool. But it is not show friends. It ain't show my turn. It is show business. And I think all these guys are very confident in their abilities. And Diabell will feel like, I'm the best of that group. I'm not tripping. Where you might, that could, if you were to come to a scrimmage or something and KJ Lacey looked like that, then maybe a seed of doubt could be planted. But these guys, trust me, Diabell comes from the son of an NBA player that like got into mental battles with Kobe Bryant. I don't think that kid's going to lack confidence. I don't think he's going to question his mentality. I think they will. I think of all the guys, Diabell may be the best, along with like Arch Manning. They may have the best mentalities when it's all said and done in terms of how they're wired. They're not intimidated. They don't really seem worried about the process. They're fully confident in who they are and what they believe they're going to be. And so outside pressure hasn't impacted that. So I think, that's one of the things in a quarterback you probably want more than anything else. And they've been getting that. And I think, Trey Owens doesn't come to Texas if he doesn't have that, because why in the hell would you want to follow Arch Manning purposefully? Well, because you aren't worried, because you think you believe in yourself. Okay. That really is at the quarterback position such a key piece of the puzzle. And Sark keeps finding that.
And the thing is, you said one thing about Sark. He is definitely loyal to his recruiting. But as we've seen during the regular season, we saw that there was a loyalty to Quinn from the moment he was like, you're my guy, you're my guy, you're my guy. And the only time he wavered, obviously, was that Georgia game in the regular season. And even after then, it's like he doubled down on Quinn. Like, it was almost like that never happened. Like, why are you guys asking me about Quinn or Arch and this? And
outright defiance.
Almost like, well, because you benched him, and so that's kind of why the question. It was almost like that never happened. He was like, no, it never happened. He was loyal to Quinn to the point where you and I both know that Quinn was supposed to go pro before last season. It didn't happen, and then he said, okay. Well, now we'll give you one more year. And they had to talk to the Mannings and say, look, man, you're going to have to wait because this is our guy. And now the conversation is had with everybody else behind Arch, which is, You will have to wait because Arch is my guy. You'll have to wait until he's gone. And as long as Arch is the quarterback here at University of Texas, you're not going to play unless you get in some mop-up roles. The real battle becomes probably 2 years from now when it's Trey, Diabell, KJ Lacey, and whoever else is on campus as to who becomes that starter. But that's a long time from now. But anyway, I saw that. Was there anything else that came out of this weekend that was interesting and noteworthy, Catch, as I spend Monday kind of catching up?
I thought the Torrey Becton article was really interesting and good. For those that don't know, check out the Sunday Pulpit over on orangebloods.com. Anwar did not a feature story, but he did his lead in his column was kind of talking about Torrey Becton. And I think for me, the real interesting part of the Torrey Becton story was that in year one, he looked like just a guy that when he was hired, it wasn't a real flashy hire. It wasn't like, oh my God, they didn't make a hire where at the time everybody said that's the best strength and conditioning coach in the country. Like that didn't exist. It was a little bit of like, interesting hire. And then in year one, they don't make a bowl game. And it was like, well, look, man, I don't know what kind of job he is doing, but I know what he isn't doing. Mm-hmm. He didn't turn these guys into world beaters overnight.
Yeah.
And yet, and I wondered after year one, like, is this dude the guy? Did he make a bad hire at the strength and conditioning hire? And most head coaches can't survive that. And that he's turned out that this program has become known for speed, that they keep sending guys to the combine and guys keep running 4.3s, and that 14 guys at the combine and last year, and that every year now it feels like Texas is going to be sending a bunch of guys to the combine, and that there aren't question marks about the development of the guys. You know what I mean? Like, every question that would have existed, I think, has been answered. And, when the season ends last year, it ended because Ohio State just had a few more good players than Texas did. The difference between those two teams was just the margins were so thin. In the end, their possible first or second day edge player was better than Texas's NFL right tackle who was playing hurt. And that was the play that decided the game. But they went toe-to-toe essentially for most of 4 quarters. And that's the difference right now against Ohio State and really Georgia for that matter. Texas probably still just a couple of guys away. But what you don't say is they're not big enough, they're not strong enough, they don't have enough team speed. They are physically trailing. You don't say that. They're just missing a couple of guys. And I thought the Torrey Becton piece was really good. If people can't flock to it because it's about the strength and conditioning coach, fair enough. But in terms of who is working at an elite level in the football program and who deserves a massive attaboy, it's probably him as much as anybody in the program. I thought it was a really good and timely read.
Thanks, man. The thing about the Becton thing, there were a lot of people, Catch, if we go back in history, that thought to themselves, well, we know Yancey McKnight, but who the hell is this Becton guy? And the thing is, you know how we knew who Yancey McKnight was? Because Tom Herman at every Big 12 media day would pull out a sheet of paper and say, all right, in the offseason, we had this many gains. We were able to do this many squats, this many burpees. We gained 700 pounds of muscle. We have a comprehensive 6% body fat. He would go through all the stuff. So we knew what Yancey did, right, wrong, or indifferent. We had an idea of Yancey McKnight's work. Torrey Becton's a little bit, he's a little bit more under the radar. He's from Cal. Okay, we don't know anything about him. And people after year one thought Torrey Becton sucks and he needs to be fired. That was the consensus. That's what people said. This guy sucks. He needs to be fired. What we didn't know is that he was laying a foundation. We didn't know that he was actually undoing a lot of the wrong that had been done before. And again, I pointed out in the column though, we've gotten real pumped up about strength and conditioning coaches like Pat Moore and the Pit. When you look back at it, it kind of sounds dumb that a guy's injured. And so you know what you do with an injured guy? You make him do a lot of exercises on that injury to make him tough.
To make him feel bad about being hurt.
Like he's like, but I have a broken foot. He's like, that's right. Now you're in the pit and we're gonna bring you hell. Like, or we can just help me recover. And so the Becton thing, as they start working on strength and conditioning and really working on speed and flexibility and really specializing in not only him and his team, being able to send guys to the combine has, you got to be physically ready. I've had people tell me that the reason why Jordan Whittington was always injured was because he always did a bunch of heavy lifting. Like it was just heavy lifting in high school, heavy lifting in college. And like Becton got in here and was like, man, what the hell are y'all doing? Stop all that. Let's get you stronger. And Jordan Whittington was actually able to be healthy for the first time. And so you started seeing that. You started seeing a lot of success stories. And one of the things I pointed out in the column was you talked about speed, like Arch Manning, that long run versus UTSA, when he was asked about it in the postseason, he credited Torrey Becton for actually helping him with his speed to get faster, like Arch. And we see how everybody else, so there's a speed factor, there's a strength factor. I pointed out that when we saw them go up to Alabama and basically they were bullying Alabama in the fourth quarter, we saw that's a product of it. You can see why Steve Sarkisian has said, like, that guy can't leave. Like, we're going to give that guy money. I don't care what it is. I was told, Catch, that when he got that Jets offer, the Sark instantly made the call and said, this guy can't leave. It needs to. The contract has to be done. And later that day, the contract was done. So it is, as we kind of in a lull before we get started with the spring practice and stuff. So wanted to kind of like put that out there, highlight it. If you on Orange Bloods, I have a bunch of information from folks who really gave me some behind the scenes stuff.
It's great content over at Orange Bloods right now. Go check it out. It's even in the off season when you would think it's dead and quiet. I think we are as good right now as we've almost ever been. So go check it out. Go to Orange Bloods. We need to get like a spring free trial. I'll get that cooking here at some point in the near future. Anwar, are you ready to wrap up?
Yeah, can I just tell you two quick things? One, I'm still kind of tripping on Ryan Wingo needing LASIK. Even on Monday, I'm still kind of tripping on that one. That's going to be one of my favorite stories going forward. Secondly, maybe this is just a you and I off the air conversation. I kind of shoulder shrugged Arsenal winning. I was like, oh, cool, great. We're only like 800 points behind Liverpool. Congratulations. I don't know. Injuries.
I mean, you guys need to get Saka healthy. And then you're in the quarterfinals of the Champions League. Like, that's the thing. Arsenal is not catching Liverpool. They're just not. But the Champions League is there. I don't think they're going to win it, but that's where my focus would be. And look, the fact that Liverpool is out, it means that they can get past Real Madrid, that they're probably going to get maybe then PSG awaits them. Like, I don't know. I don't think they're going to do it, but like you don't have something to play for. I don't think it's a league. Chelsea was so bad yesterday. Arsenal should have won that match 4-5-0. It was, it just the problem is Arsenal, after their initial flurry at first 15, 20 minutes of that game where they should have scored multiple goals, they just have such a hard time being creative. Anyway, you're right. It's probably
it is often, and that, like, the last thing I'll say is Damn it. I need Austin FC to score some points, man. Like this,
That was a huge win. 1-0.
It was a great win. It's a great win. Stuber's a
You
badass,
can't when you go to LA, when you're Austin FC and you go on the road at LAFC, you're just trying to get a smash and grab. 1-0 is what you're praying for. That's the dream. If you can get out 1-1 and take a point, that's such a good point that they took all three. Good job, Austin FC. I was really pleased with that this weekend.
Okay, now we'll definitely get off. Because I know no one cares
Hey, it's
anymore.
the end of the show. Let us just have a moment. Guys, like, comment, subscribe. We really appreciate it. Get into the comments. Leave some comments. It's too late to engage with the Specs chat, but you can do that with House Divided in a couple of hours. Chad and I will be doing our thing at the top of the noon hour Central, like we do every single day, Monday through Friday. Just like tomorrow, you'll catch the old-fashioned show, and the rest of the week, 9 a.m. Central. For Anwar and myself, thanks for hanging out with us for an hour or so. We always appreciate you investing that with us. Believe me, we do not take it for granted. Go check out rogueshop.com. They are Texas's home for legal CBD, THC, and so much more. It will improve your life. For Jeff and Anwar, we'll see you soon.